Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going to be taking a deep dive into NVIDIA. You know, that company that's like right in the middle of all this AI craziness that's
Mm.
happening. We've got a pretty thick report here, earnings calls. We've even got some like news articles that hinted a little bit of controversy.
Yeah, it's a lot to dig through, but that's kind of what we do here, right? Try to figure out is Nvidia stock like a golden ticket or is it a risky bet? What do you think?
Well, I mean, the first thing I noticed is that this report talks about record revenue in Q4 of 2025.
Hmm.
And apparently a lot of that's thanks to their new Blackwell GPU, which is like selling like hotcakes,
Right.
faster than anything they've ever put out before, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean it is pretty impressive, All the cloud providers are all like scrambling to get their hands on these GPUs to power all their new AI stuff, but as always, got to look beyond the hype. The report also mentions some potential supply chain issues and of course, competition's heating up.
Yeah, I guess it's like the classic problem of having a product that's too popular, right? You can't make them fast enough. And speaking of competition, you flagged something called custom ASICs in the report. What are those all about?
Well, think of it this way. NVIDIA's GPUs, they're kind of like a Swiss Army knife, you know, good for a bunch of different tasks. But an ASIC, that's more like a specialized tool, like, say, a really high-powered drill designed for a specific job. And, they can be a lot more efficient, but they don't have that same flexibility as a GPU does.
Oh, so some companies might choose these like super specialized AI chips over NVIDIA's more general purpose ones. Okay, that definitely adds another wrinkle to this whole thing. What about this concern about NVIDIA's revenue being so concentrated in one place geographically?
Yeah, that's definitely something investors are a little, wary about. NVIDIA relies pretty heavily on the US market, but, in their defense, they are talking a lot about how AI is becoming a global thing, and they're investing in a lot of data centers all over the world, so that might help.
Yeah, makes sense. Got to spread that risk around. Right. But then there's this kind of elephant in the room, These news articles talking about a possible fraud investigation. That's not something you can just ignore.
Absolutely. The allegations are pretty serious, potentially bypassing US rules to sell chips to China. But, you got to remember these are just allegations at this point.
Right. Innocent until proven guilty, as they say. Still, it definitely adds another layer of uncertainty to this whole analysis. So we've got booming growth, possible supply chain issues, specialized competitors popping up, all that revenue concentrated in one place, and now a potential legal battle. This is getting pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. But one thing that caught my eye in the report was their fair value estimate for NVIDIA stock. Basically like a projection of what the stock should be worth based on, how they think they're going to do in the future.
And what that estimate's saying.
Well, even with all these potential risks, their analysis suggests that NVIDIA's current share price might actually be undervalued.
Wait, undervalued. Even with all this stuff hanging over their heads, I'm intrigued, but I'm also a little skeptical. How can they say that?
Well, their analysis is based on something called a discounted cash flow model. It's basically a fancy way of saying they're predicting NVIDIA's future profits and then figuring out what those profits are worth right now.
Yeah, but predicting the future is a tricky business,
Yeah.
right? Especially in the tech world.
Mhm.
What makes them so confident in their predictions?
Well, they're using a bunch of different assumptions based on historical data, industry trends, and what NVIDIA itself is saying about their future plans. They're factoring in things like the AI market continuing to grow, the adoption of new technologies like that Blackwell Ultra GPU, and the potential impact of competition and those supply chain challenges we're talking about.
So they're looking at it from all sides, huh? But how do they account for, like, those wild card events, like that potential fraud investigation?
That's where it gets really tricky. Those kinds of events are super hard to predict and quantify. Analysts might adjust their projections a little bit depending on how likely they think those events are and how big of an impact they think they'll have. But it's more of an art than a science, honestly.
So basically, this fair value estimate, it's more of a starting point,
Mm,
not like a guaranteed thing, right? It gives us a general idea, but it's not a crystal ball.
exactly. It's one tool to use for your own research, not the whole answer.
Right, right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot, but it's clear that this is a pretty complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
Right.
We need to take a closer look at the specific arguments for and against investing in NVIDIA, based on everything we've learned so far.
So on the bullish side, you can't deny that NVIDIA is like the king of AI hardware right now. Their GPUs are the industry standard, and they've got a long history of coming up with new stuff. Plus, the demand for AI is just going to keep going up. NVIDIA is like perfectly positioned to take advantage of that. But
But there's always a but, right? What about the arguments against investing in NVIDIA, like right now?
well, the bears would definitely point to all those risks we talked about,
Hmm.
right? The competition from those ASICs, the supply chain stuff, relying so much on the U.S. market, and then, of course, that fraud investigation. Plus, some people would say that NVIDIA's valuation is already, like, sky high, so there might not be as much room for growth.
So it's that classic risk versus reward thing, huh? High potential gains, but you also got to be prepared for some serious bumps on the road. It sounds like this report's fair value estimate. It all comes down to whether NVIDIA can, successfully deal with all these challenges.
Yeah, pretty much. They're basically betting on NVIDIA staying on top in the AI chip market while also, figuring out all that other stuff. Their analysis says that if NVIDIA can do that, then their stock could be, like, way undervalued right now.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's be real for a second. This report, it's just one piece of the puzzle,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
What else should people be looking at before they, you know, actually put their money on the line?
Yeah, for sure. Don't just take this report's word for it.
Yeah.
Do your own research. Look at NVIDIA's earnings reports. Read what other analysts are saying about the AI market and their competition. See if you can find sources that poke holes in the report's predictions.
So basically, be an informed skeptic. Don't get blinded by all the exciting growth stuff and ignore the potential downsides.
Exactly. A little bit of healthy skepticism is always a good thing when it comes to investing. This report's a good starting point, but it's not like a magic formula or anything.
Right. Okay. So where does all this leave us? We've got this report saying NVIDIA is undervalued, but we've also got this whole list of potential risks that could, throw things off track.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And, that's what this whole deep dive was all about, giving you the information you need to answer that question for yourself. We've looked at how complex the AI market is. We've talked about NVIDIA's dominant position and, all the challenges they're facing.
Yeah, we've laid out the facts, but we can't tell anyone what to do, right?
Right.
It's up to each individual to decide whether or not to invest in NVIDIA.
Exactly. We wanted to give a clear and balanced perspective, but, we're not financial advisors. Your investment choices, they got to line up with your own goals, your risk tolerance, and your own research.
And speaking of research, I want to emphasize something really important. Remember those news articles about the fraud investigation? That's still an ongoing thing, and it's super important to stay updated on any new developments or, any outcomes related to that investigation.
Oh, absolutely. That whole situation adds a whole other layer of risk, legal risk, reputational risk. It could have a huge impact on NVIDIA's future. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye on that and factor it into your overall assessment of the company.
So this deep dive, it's given you a good foundation for understanding NVIDIA and where they stand in the AI world. But, the learning doesn't stop here. The tech world moves fast. You got to stay ahead of the game.
And that's where our channel comes in, right? If you found this deep dive helpful and you want to stay in the loop about all the latest stuff happening in tech, AI, investing, there's one simple thing you can do.
Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon so you don't miss our future deep dives. We're all about bringing you insightful analysis of the most important topics in tech.
That's right. We believe that knowledge is power, and we want to help you make informed decisions about your investments and the future of tech.
And that wraps up our deep dive into NVIDIA. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.